Hola mi gente bella y bienvenidos a mi canal. My name is Sandra if this is your first time here, and welcome to my channel. In this channel, I'll be speaking and you'll be learning about everything about high-end or luxury candle making business tips. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. As you can tell by the title of this video, we'll be discussing adding colors to your candles using coconut wax. So in front of me today I have 4 pitchers filled with already coconut wax. I know that last time I made this video of let's make candles, and that video took me a little bit longer because I did not have my wax pre-measured, and now I did. So I have 4 pitchers, and all of the 4 pitchers have 1 pound of wax each. And I have my water going here. I have my double broiler method going, and I also have 4 6-ounce jars, and we'll be using these to actually put the wax inside of them. And the reason why I have 4 different pitchers and 4 different vessels is because I want to measure out 1 drop. Actually, I'm going to start with 2 drops, then we'll do 3 drops, then we'll do 5 drops, and then we'll do 8 drops of red dye from Candle Science. And the reason why I am not using just 1 pitcher and just adding drops by drops is because I had already did that in the back end earlier, and I wanted to compare what I did before to actually just adding the color to the exact amount of wax to compare it to how I did it earlier. So earlier I had 2 pounds of wax and I was adding 1 drop, and then I would add that to 1 candle jar, which was the 6-ounce jar, and then I was doing the same thing with the same exact pitcher, and then I was adding another drop to make that 2 drops, and then I will add that to the second vessel, and then the same pitcher again, I'll add 1 more drop, which means that I had already added 3 drops total, and then another vessel, and then I skipped 4 and went to 5 to see the difference between 1, 2, 3, and 5, and then I did the same thing again with an 8 drops with the same wax. I did not add any more wax, but I was taking out wax to add to the vessel. So I wanted to see and compare, does it really matter adding drops in increments to the same wax container to the same wax container to the different vessels to see the different color gradients. And now I'm only using the 4 different pitchers with wax, and each of them again have 1 pound of wax. And with those 1 pound of wax, I'm going to add, again, I'm explaining the same thing over. I'm going to be adding 2, then 3, then 5, and then 8. So then we'll see how that goes. So again, I do have my thermometer. I have my mixing spoon, if you can see, my gold mixing spoon. And I also have my notes here so that I could jot down exactly what I did. And actually I had already jotted down what I did previously, but this one is completely different. So I'm going to jot those things down too, so that I know if I were to add color to my jars, what colors gradient will I like and what color gradient I really want my candles to look like. So that's why I'm doing this video, and just in case that in the future I want to add colors to my waxes. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to start off with the smaller one, and I'm going to put it in here, and then I'll start with this one, and then I'll put that one in there, and then we'll just chit chat while those are going down in the double broiler method. And what I also did was I have these pieces of squares, which are napkins that I cut into little pieces so that I could take my pipette, and I have 4 pipettes. And so that I could just take and blot each of those colors that I'm going to make and put them on a white piece of napkin to see if the color that I put on the actual candles while it's warm actually makes a difference when you put them on a napkin, to see if it absorbs the same gradient of color that you are going to use in your candle vessels. So as soon as those are melted, we'll be adding the colors as I said. And the meantime, I'm going to heat up both of my pitchers until I reach the temperature of 190 degrees. So as soon as I get to 190 degrees, I will be putting my color dye, and I'll be mixing for approximately 1 minute or 60 seconds so that the color could actually mix very well in there. So I'm not going to start with 1 drop, because 1 drop of color is extremely light, and I wanted to see a bigger gradient between 2 drops as opposed to only 1. So that's why I'm starting off with 2. But I do have the 1 drop when I did it earlier today, so we'll be seeing that one. And I'm not using Wicks because this is just for demonstration purposes, and I don't want to use my Wicks because I'm not going to actually burn these, and I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to give it away. I'm not adding any color, so that's why I'm not adding any Wicks. But if I were to add Wicks to these vessels use HTP 72, and I also have my labels. I like to label everything so that I won't forget. I also have my labels here that I'll be labeling each of my vessels with the 2, 3, 5, and 8 drops, so that I know which one is which, although the colors might tell me exactly which one is which. Now, I know a lot of people have questions in regards to when should you add colors to your actual wax while it's burning, or is it before it's burning, or is it when you're going to pour, or is it while it's burning? My preference for me is as soon as I get it to the top of my maximum temperature, which is 190 degrees, that's when I will add my color, and that's when I will mix my actual color so that I can have an actual the heat from the wax actually binds the colors to the wax so that they will all be distributed equally. So if you are at home, I'll have a close-up of the actual wax so that you'll see how it looks like when it is actually mixed with the color. So you could see that if you don't actually mix it thoroughly, it will have some spotty colors in the actual wax, and some will be white, and then some of it will be actually red or pink or whatever. So you have to actually mix it at a higher temperature so that when you do get to mix, it all is evenly distributed. Now the next thing that I want to discuss is what dyes should I use? Should you use liquid dyes like this one? And this one is a 4-ounce bottle of red liquid dye. I do have other colors, but I think that the red is a color that you can actually see more than the other colors that I have. And or you use the blocks, and this block is white. This block is white, and the reason why I have a white block dye is because when I used to use paraffin, I wanted the paraffin wax to have that white color, just like soy, and now just like coconut, but it never got to that. For some odd reason, white doesn't really come out that good when you're actually making candles. Maybe if you were to whip it into making it into something else, then yes, that white will become white, but in candles, the white didn't really look white when you were to mix it with the paraffin wax. So that's why I have white. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a color block. Now, the thing with the color block is that you can't really measure how much color that you really want, because the block is an actual block. Like, it's really, really hard. So what you'll do is you're actually gonna get something really hard. Like, my mixing spoon is pretty hard, but I wouldn't use this to actually break the color block. I will probably get a knife that is very sharp, or scissors to actually cut it, so that I could put it into the melted wax. Now, the thing with the blocks is that you can't really measure it. So you could add as many chips in there as you want, like pieces of it, but you can't really recreate that same color every single time, because you're not actually measuring this when you are adding it to your candle wax. However, the actual color dye, which is in liquid form, you can measure it by drops. So if you're adding 1 drop for your candle wax, then you'll add that all the time to achieve the exact same color. So however many drops you add to your wax is recreatable, as opposed to adding an actual block, because the blocks will be cut into different pieces every time you're actually cutting through it. So my preference is not the color blocks, but they are as highly pigmented just as a color liquid color dye. Now, what you should not use to color your waxes for candle making is using crayons. Do not use crayons to mix in to make your candle colorful, because crayon composition is not made for an actual candle wax. So don't use crayons for your candles. And actually, the crayon wax that makes up the wax for the crayons, even though it's made out of paraffin, it's not the kind of paraffin that can actually seep through your wicks. So it will clog your wicks if you are using crayons to make color, to wax, to mix in with your wax to make it colorful. So don't add crayons to your wax to make candles, because it's not going, well, it is going to work. You're going to see the color gradient, but it's not going to work when you light that candle. It's going to clog your wick, and it's not going to look, it's not going to burn well, and you don't want to sell a candle to anybody that does not burn well. The other thing that you should not add to your candle for coloring will be soap dyes. There is a difference. They do sell color dyes for soaps and color dyes for waxes, and you cannot use the wax dyes with soap products, and vice versa. You cannot use the soap dyes with wax products, because using the soap one, the same thing will happen, is that it won't go through your wick. It won't blend in very well with your wax, because it wasn't made for wax, for candle waxes. So don't use the actual soap dye for your wax candles. And then now for adding candle dyes for your soap making, if you are making soap, that's not a good idea because this is not safe for your skin. This is made specifically for candles to burn, not to put on your skin. So don't add this, which is your dye for your candles, on any products that is labeled for skin, such as soap material. So don't add this or the candle dye to soap making anything. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my waxes to see if they're burning. This one has a little bit of chunk in it, and this is at 162, and this one is 178. So a few more temperatures, and then we'll just be adding the actual color dye so that we'll see the different gradients. Again, I'm only going to be using 2, and then I'll be moving to 3, and then 5, and then we'll do 8. Now, how long to mix your colors when you are adding colors to your candle wax? And I touched up on it earlier, and I recommend 60 seconds or 1 minute. You could go longer than that, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. What you should do is when you do add it, I'll explain it again when I'm actually doing it. When you add it to your wax, make sure that you're distributing the colors in the wax correctly, so that you won't have spots in your color dye. Now the next question that you may have is how much color to add. How much color to add all depends on you. So if you want it to be light, so you'll stick between, between 1 or 5, and we'll see how that gradient looks. Or you want it a little bit darker, but you don't want it too light, so you go between the 6 and the 8. And if you really want it dark, then you'll add more than 8 drops. But more than 8 drops will make your color extremely dark if you want it that dark. Now, I'm not gonna spoil it, but I'll tell you guys when I get to explaining the previous candles that I mixed with the ones that I'm doing today, so that you guys could see the difference, and then I'll explain why the difference is. And another question that you probably may have is, which is better, the chips or the blocks or the dye? And again, it all depends on you and how you want to actually control the colors in your candle. So if you don't mind having different gradients every single time you're making candles, then you could go ahead and use the color block. And if you are wanting to have exactly the same color each and every time you make a candle, then I suggest you use the dye. $174 was the first one, and then this one is at 187. So it is getting close. It is getting close. So I'm gonna do a time lapse so that you guys could not wait as long as I'm waiting, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I'm done with as soon as the temperature actually reaches 90 degrees for one of them, so that I could move on to adding the colors and mixing it for the 60 seconds, and then I'll move on to adding it to that one jar, and then I'll move to the second one, and then I'll do the exact same thing. So I'll get back to you guys in a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to test out the larger one because it looks like this one was a lot hotter, and this one is already at 190. And this one is still at 184. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add 2 drops to the bigger one, and then we'll mix that for 60 seconds. At this point, you guys could just take it out of the actual double boiler method if you want, but you don't really necessarily have to. But the reason why I'm leaving it here is because I have my camera here so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing and what it looks like. But typically, if I were to be making this at home, well, I am home. If I were to make this for resale, I wouldn't leave my picture in the actual water because I don't want the wax to overheat. So technically, I'm holding it over the water as I'm mixing it. And if you guys could see this, the color is completely mixed in, but I want to make sure that all the color in here is actually mixed completely. It's nothing wrong with over blending or over mixing, because there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's cool, it's okay. And I do apologize for the noise, it was pretty loud. Okay, so now I'm gonna put this down and then I'm going to add this one. Swap. And I don't think you guys can see what I'm doing. Actually, let me move the camera so you guys can see. Okay, so I'm going to label this one with 2 drops so I know exactly which one is which. And then I'm going to grab my napkin and I'm gonna blot a few drops so that I can see the difference. Okay, this one is still at 187. Well, it went up. So we'll just wait a few more minutes and then this one is heating up. And then I'll get back to you guys again with an update. Okay, so now my smaller picture is already at 190 degrees and we're going to be adding 3 drops of color dye to this container. Well, picture, not container. 3. And I'm not even pressing the actual dropper. I'm just putting it in there. And if you can see the color gradient in here, it is, if you don't mix it, it will not mix at all. I mean, you can make a swirl out of this, a candle swirl out of this if you want it to look like that. But I don't want it to look like that, so that's why I'm going to be mixing it. And again, I will take this out if I were to make this candle to sell. But because I am not going to be selling this, this is just for testing purposes. I'm not going to take it out of the actual container, but you should if you are doing this at home. Okay, so we're gonna be adding the same amount of wax to this one. And again, this one is my 3 drops, not third. And we're gonna add a few drops. Actually, I just added 2 drops to the other one. I'll add 2 drops to this one too, just to keep it consistent. Okay, and Where's my paper? I'm going to put 3 because I added 3 drops to this one. Okay, so this one is at 127 degrees and there's still a lot of chunks in here. So we'll just leave that in there. And this one is still at 171, so it's almost there. So we'll get back to those in a minute. Now, I'm pretty sure that your question will be, what am I going to do with the leftover waxes that I'm not using? Because this is a lot of waxes and I'm only using approximately only 6 ounces per jar. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm just going to put those all together and then I'll just make more samples of whatever I want, and I'll just give those away to my friends and to my family because they actually like burning candles, and my kids, my son does like burning candles too, and so then I'll make some for them as well. So I'm not going to let these waxes go to waste because obviously that's money and coconut wax is a lot of money. So I'll just remelt these and I'll add fragrances to them, and then I'll just give those away. Now the ones that are already in the vessels, those, what I'm going to do with those, I'm just going to reheat those and melt those as well, and then I'll just add it to the bunch. I can also, instead of reheating them, I could put those in the freezer once it's hard, and then it'll soften, well, not soften off the wax, but what it will do, it'll separate it from the actual containers because it'll shrink. Because you know, when wax is in a very cool environment, wax will shrink. So if you put it in the freezer, it will shrink the wax and it'll separate from the actual container. So then I'll be able to pop it out and put it in my in another vessel, which is one of my melting pitchers, and then I'll remelt those, add fragrances, and I'll be able to give those away like that. So we'll get back to making sure that these are at 190 degrees, and these are my last 2, so I'm just waiting for those, and then I'll let those cool down, and as soon as they cool down, I'm going to bring out the previous candle jars that I had already done earlier, and we'll compare and contrast what happened and how to fix it. Okay, so we'll get back in a minute. Okay, so this one, so we'll get back to trying to get these to be at the right temperature, and this one is already there, and so is this one. So they're both at the right temperature, and we're going to be adding to this one first because this one was the one that was in here a little bit longer. So we'll be adding the 5 drops. 3, 4, and 5. So this is the 5 drops that I added on that one, and we'll get to mixing. And I'm gonna turn these off because I don't need this anymore to be on. And I know that I like to use my pouring pitcher, but because there's so little wax in here, I could just directly use this. Now, my only complaint about using colors is the fact that when you do use color, your wax gets red or whatever color that you use inside of the pitcher. So it'll take a little bit extra elbow grease to actually clean these. It's not that it's hard, but you do have to work quickly if you are adding color to your waxes because it does dry up pretty quick, and then you'll have residue around your pictures, so you don't want to really leave that in there, so you have to clean that off. Now if you were using clear wax, or not clear wax, but if you were not using any color in your waxes, then you won't have to excessively clean that out, so that there won't be any residue of any other color inside of your picture, because it's, you know, it's naturally colored, so you didn't add any color to it. But if you do add colors, I do suggest to make sure that you clean it thoroughly, so that there won't be any colors that stays in the actual picture. And again, I'm going to get my label. I'm going to add 5 because that's how many drops I added to that one. Label it on my container, and then take my little paper and then add it. Now, what I was thinking was that maybe if I had blotting paper, which doesn't absorb too much of anything, it's just it kind of just leaves whatever you put on it on the surface, as opposed to a napkin that the napkin actually absorbs it. Maybe using a blotting paper, or using the canvas paper that artists use when they are coloring, to see if that actually works best than an actual napkin, because napkins do absorb stuff. So I'm looking at the color gradient. I mean, the color gradient is different from each one, but if you want it to be exactly the same, or a color that is to the T, I suggest to use one of those artist canvas paper or a blotting paper. I'm gonna add 8 drops of color to this container. I didn't realize that I was rambling, I forgot. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I should have used gloves because I already saw that I have red on my fingers from the dye. I didn't even realize that. But again, I'm gonna be mixing, and I wanna show you what this looks like up close so you guys can see what it looks like when you don't mix it. I did not want to talk over mixing because I did that earlier and it was extremely loud, and I apologize for that. I didn't realize it until now. But this is my last one, and I'm going to label that one with 8 drops. And then now I'm going to wait until these solidify so that we can compare this one to the previous ones that I already did. So I'm gonna leave these to the side so they could get cool. And where is my, oh yes. And then I'm going to again get 2 drops of the 8 drops of candle dye so you guys can see what it looks like when you put it down on a paper. Okay, so I'm gonna let these cool down and then we'll come back and then we'll compare and contrast these to the ones that I already did earlier. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so it's been several hours later. I'm not sure how long it's been. I have the ones that I did on camera, which are these 4, the 2 the 3, the 5, and the 8 drop candles. And then I also did 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 12 way before I filmed the video. And with the one that I filmed before I filmed, the ones that I did before I filmed, it was I did it at 2 pounds. And what I did with these was that I had as I was adding 1 drop, I was adding it to the candle jar, and then I did not refill, or I did not change the actual picture. All I did was just add more drops to the same exact picture without adding any more wax. And what I saw was that when the first one that I added only 1 drop, it was very light. So I left the paper and I made the same thing. Like I cut little squares and I added 2 drops, I believe, to each one, just like I did the ones that I did on camera, of each of the wax as I added the colors. And then this was the one for the 1 drop of color dye for the red, and this one came out a very light pink. And then I also did the same thing for the 2. So as soon as I added the wax to this container, I went back and added a 2nd drop to the pitcher, and then I took that and I added 2 drops to my paper, to my napkin, and then this the color that I came out with. And this is again the 2 pounds of wax. Now I did the same thing, but I did it with 1 pound of wax. And this is the one that I did on camera, and the one that I did on camera is a lot easier to see when you have 2 papers. So the ones that I did on camera will be this one, and I'm going to put a dot on there so you guys can see the difference. So the ones with the dots on top is the one that I did on camera, and the one that doesn't have a dot will be the one that I did off camera. So this is the difference between the one that I did off camera, which is this one, and the one that I did on camera, which is this one, the one with the dot. And as you can see, the color with the one that was only 1 pound is a lot darker than the one that I added with 2 pounds, which was this one. And you could also see it by the candles. You can see it with the candles difference here, and then if you put it together, you'll compare it together, and you can see that this one, that one that I did on camera, is a lot darker than the one that I did off camera, and you can see how that looks. And again, reason being is because even though you add the same amount of drops of color dye to your candle wax, because there was more wax with the 2 pounds versus the 1 pound that I did on camera, that accounts for the difference. So the more wax you have to account for the color gradient that you are going to receive. So if you added less wax to your picture, then you should actually add a little less color dye so that the color gradient won't be as dark, because there is less wax to bind with the color dye. That's why you get a higher concentration of that color in that wax, because there's less wax to combine it to. Now the one that I did with the 3 drops, this one is that I did with the 2 pounds, and then this one is the one that I did with on camera with the 1 pound, and you can see the big difference. And this one is a lot darker, which is the one that I did with the 1 pound versus the one with the 2 pounds, and it was the exact same number of drops. And you can also see it when you look at the actual candles itself. So this candle is the one that I did off camera with 2 pounds, and this one is the one that I did on camera with 1 pound, and this one obviously is darker, and you can see the difference. Okay, and then the same thing will be for the one with the 5 drops. And the one with the 5 drops, it keeps just getting darker. I think you get, it all depends on what you want to do, because the one with the 2 pounds, which is this one, even though it is a lot lighter than the one with this, which is this one, which is the 1 pound, it looks nice. They both look nice. It's a nice pink color, but my preference will be the lightest pink because I just like lighter colors. So the one with the 2 pounds will be my best bet. But if you want to add more color to it, if you're just using 2 pounds, then this is the color gradient that you'll get if you just use 5 drops with 2 pounds. But if you use 1 pound with 5 drops, then you'll get this darker color. So this one again is the one that I did on camera, off camera, 2 pounds, 1 pound, 5 drops. They're both 5 drops. But this one is darker because it has less wax and less binding liquid with the color versus the 2 pounds, which is a much more wax weight than the actual 1 pound. And then this will be the last one that I did, which was, well, comparison that I did, which was the 8 drops. And again, the one with the dot is the one that I did with 1 pound, and this one is the one that I did with 2 pounds, and you can see the difference. And this one is a lot darker, and you can also see it with the actual wax, and you can see that this 8 drop, which is 1 pound, is way darker than the 2 pound 8 drop. And it looks like this one kind of resembles the 5 drops, and you can see that 8 drops with 2 pounds is the same color as the 5 drops in 1 pound. So you can see how it actually looks together. And then I did an extra one with 12 drops, and the one with the 12 drops obviously is pretty dark. It's still not red. It is a dark pink, but it's not red. So if you want it red, then you'll have to add way more than 12, because 12 still didn't give me a red color. And this one was with 2 pounds. So maybe probably you'll get a closer color to red if you were to just use 1 pound as opposed to using 2 pounds. And then again, this one is just 2 pounds with 1 drop of color. And this one is a nice, pretty dark, pretty light pink. Kind of matches my nail color actually. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that if in the future you are going to be adding colors to your waxes, then you could take into consideration that the more wax you have to add a little bit more drops to your actual wax so that you'll get that achieved color. And also using napkins could give you an actual, a real actual depiction of what the color will actually look like based on, I just added 2 drops of the actual wax on each of these napkin squares, and it actually gave me a real depiction of each color. So you can just use a napkin if you want to make sure that you're using the right color for your wax, if you are going to color your wax. Now again, I'm not going to be burning these. I'm going to just recycle the wax, and I'll just make these for to give it out for family and friends. And I'll just add color, not color because I already add color. I'll add fragrances to these, and then I'll just give those out. But I hope you like this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and let me know which of the colors that you did enjoy. And also tell me if you already use the color blocks, or if you enjoy using the dye, liquid dye, as opposed to the color blocks, and let me know how you did yours. So until the next one,